And you are watching and listening to the Electronic Intifada live stream. We're now joined by Hammam Farah. Hammam is a psychotherapist based in Toronto and a political organizer within Canada's Palestine Solidarity Movement and the Palestinian community. He was born in Gaza as part of Gaza's small Christian minority. He's found himself speaking on its behalf as it faces the threat of extinction at the hands of the Israeli military. Hammam, thank you so much for being with us on the live stream today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Hammam. And I just want to say I've been a long time admirer of your writing and your words. And I'm sorry that we are welcoming you to the live stream in these horrific circumstances.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. Likewise, Ali. Long-time reader since the second Intifada. I've been reading your work.
Thank you.
And speaking of which, this morning you tweeted that, quote, Israel bombed an entire residential block of the Rimal neighborhood of Gaza City. My aunt Mona Farah is in that area. We can't reach her. Hammam, tell us about your family in Gaza, if there's been any updates with your aunt or other family members. What is this abject horror that your relatives in Gaza and in Canada are living through right now?
It's unlike anything my family has experienced in past aggressions against Gaza. Our family is for the first time they've had to leave their homes in Gaza City, along with obviously many others, and seek shelter at the churches. They left their homes just after October 7th, after the announcements were made and after the evacuation order was issued by the Israeli military to the people of Gaza to evacuate the north. And first I wasn't sure that if that included them or not, but then it was evident that everybody in the north was required to leave their homes and go south, where Israel claimed it would be safer. As we know now, the south is not safe. Nowhere in Gaza is safe. So the situation is very precarious, and we don't know. You don't know who's going to make it out alive at the end of this horror. And so my family, shortly after that announcement, left for the churches there, and because we're part of Gaza's Christian minority, the churches are a big part of daily life and community living in Gaza. The YMCA is one of the main recreation centers in not only for Christians, though also for Muslims, for everybody in Gaza. And I actually just learned that the YMCA was bombed, I think yesterday or the day before, or sometime this month. I didn't know that before. I used to spend some time there as a kid with my uncle and my family there. I had my baptism ceremony at the YMCA. We usually have our kind of receptions for events at the YMCA historically, and during the first Intifada, it was a big part of people's gathering and meeting space for communities during the first Intifada. As I remember it, I was only 7 years old at the time. But after my family left in October, they went down to the St. Porphyrius Orthodox Church. My family's Orthodox, although there are some Catholic families in Palestine as well, and some Protestant also. There is a Baptist church even in Gaza that I attended once. So they went there, and there were hundreds of others with them at the Orthodox Church. We knew that there were other families in the Catholic Church as well that took shelter there. And they had little food, little supplies. They suffer the shortages like everyone else. And the churches do their best to find food and to bring it to them and to seek aid whenever aid is allowed in. And then on October 19, we used to check on them as much as we can. We try to check on them daily. My mother is usually the person who's calling every day. But a lot of times we can't reach them because of the telecommunications blackouts. Israel bombed the telecoms centers, so we can't reach our family a lot of the time. Especially now. Now we've been unable to reach most of my relatives for some of them for a week, if not longer. So we're really worried about them, including my aunt Mona Farah. She decided to stay home in Al Rimal neighborhood. She didn't go to the church with the others, and I think one of the reasons is that she uses a walker. She's has a disability now at old age, and she uses a walker, and so she said that the church at St. Porphyrius at least was not very accessible to her needs, and would rather stay in her house. Later on, she was moved to a friend's house who could look after her in the Tufah neighborhood in Gaza, and it's in Al Rimal, but I'm not sure where exactly in Al Rimal, just a little bit in the north in Al Rimal, I believe. So when the detonation happened, or the bombing, whatever that was, that horrifying scene that I had tweeted, and I saw others were tweeting. I don't know if she was near that area. So and then at St. Porphyrius, the conditions were not easy. Of course, the people had a hard time coping, and they were sheltered there for a while, and then Israel, as we know, bombed the St. Porphyrius Church on October 19, and that bombing actually impacted my family in particular. They were sleeping in the room where the ceiling collapsed, and 18 people were killed in that bombing. My cousin being one of them, my step cousin. So his name was Sulaiman Tarazi, and the Tarazi family is very close to our family. And my other aunt Nagam, she's my mother's younger sister. She's the one I'm closest with, actually, the relative I'm closest with, and so she's the one I sort of try to keep updated with the most, and the one I really, really worry about every day. We think about her because I had a close relationship with her growing up. And she is married to Jamil Tarazi, who is a doctor, a surgeon who worked at Al Shifa for a long time. And they were together in the church, and their Jamil's son, Sulaiman, who he was 35 years old. He is married to Lily, and they have two young boys, I believe 5 and 6 years old, and they were all sleeping on the second floor of the church when it was bombed, and Sulaiman was pulled from under the rubble. Now, when he was pulled from under the rubble, he was still alive, and he was holding on to one of his sons. And when they pulled his son out of his hands first, and then came to pull him out, the floor collapsed from beneath him, from under him, and he fell, and the rocks fell on top of him into the first floor, and that's how he was ultimately lost his life. He was killed. I struggle to imagine what his son may have been going through. I don't know if his son was conscious at the time, and whether he saw his father perish like that in that way. And I struggle to think about how his son is going to grow up and feel, and possibly feel a sense of guilt as an adult because of watching his father fall like that, and how he was first pulled from his father's arms. That could very well happen to him. I hopefully he can, hopefully he'll be okay growing up. But I'm also thinking here as a therapist about early childhood trauma and what we know that can do into adulthood. As we know, the vast majority of children are traumatized in Gaza. Adults were traumatized as children. We know that many of Hamas and other resistance organizations and their childhoods were childhoods of trauma. We know a lot of them are orphans. A lot of them lost their families in previous Israeli aggressions, and as adults decided to join these organizations. Whether we agree or disagree with whatever tactics these organizations employ. Yes.
You're in the agonizing situation of so many people of not knowing what is happening to friends and loved ones, dear people, and and sometimes we know their fate and it's awful, and sometimes we don't know their fate and it's just as awful not knowing what they're going through. I want to show you this little video here that you may have seen online. It's been circulating. And this is a person called Fleur Hassan Nahum, who is a British settler in Palestine. And she claims to be the deputy mayor of Jerusalem. Of course, we don't recognize the legitimacy of that authority, but that's what she claims to be. Let's take a look at that little video.
If a ceasefire means the return of the hostages and the dismantlement of a genocidal regime that has stated that they're going to attack us again, then everybody would be in favor of a ceasefire. But if a ceasefire means that we're just going to keep them quiet for a bit until they attack again, then it's Israel's obligation to defend its citizens and destroy that threat, don't you think?
Why is it necessary, it is reported, to start shooting, having snipers outside a church?
I saw the reports this morning. The church, there are no churches in Gaza, so I'm not quite sure where the report is talking about.
There's a Catholic church in there, isn't there? That is.
Yeah, unfortunately, there are no Christians because they were driven out by.
Well, respectfully, there are Christians, because I spoke to an MP yesterday who has family members in the church who are Christians.
Well, I don't know what happened. I don't know who was attacked. I didn't see the report.
All right, so that's British settler Fleur Hassan Nahum, who claims to be the deputy mayor of Jerusalem. And she saw the reports, but then she didn't see the reports. But the important information she's conveying, Hammam, is that there are no Christians and no churches in Gaza. Can you confirm that?
I mean, here I am. I'm a Christian from Gaza. I was born in Gaza. I've been in Gaza. My family's still in Gaza. There are, we Palestinian Christians historically make up 15 to 20% of the Palestinian population. That is a large minority. But we've lost our lands and we've been expelled by the Israeli army. We've had our lands confiscated. We've been oppressed by the Israeli regime. We face the same circumstances, the same oppressions, the same incursions and bombing of our people, of our community, just as Muslims do. There's no distinction between the way that Israel oppresses Palestinian Muslims and the way it oppresses Palestinian Christians. We're all one people, and we're all united in this struggle for justice in Palestine, and for the struggle for the right to return and the end of the occupation, the end of apartheid. We see ourselves as part of the Palestinian national movement, historically and until today. Many Palestinian Christians have been prominent voices in the Palestine national movement. Historically, we've had leaders like George Habash. We had 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐥𝐞𝐿, who himself is Jordanian, but he was very involved in the Palestinian resistance and the PLO. We have Shireen Abu Akleh, who was a journalist longtime journalist, as a lot of people have heard about her, and she was assassinated by an Israeli sniper, or it was a sniper that she was shot in the head in 2022, in May of 2022, and there was an investigation. Israel refused to, and still refuses today to investigate. But there were independent investigations that found that she was killed by an Israeli soldier. And initially, Israel denied having shot her, and then gradually changed that story and admitted that it was the Israeli army and Israeli soldier that killed her. And this is, one of the reasons why it's hard to believe any of the Israeli propaganda statements coming out today about what's happening in Gaza, precisely because Israel is like the boy who cried wolf. So many statements and denials were made that were eventually disproven, refuted, or Israel itself changed its line on it and finally admitted under extreme, international pressure to admit to its crimes.
Hammam, that particular interview, which was from a British radio station, was referring to an incident that you have written about, the horrifying murder of Nahida Antoun and her daughter Samar Antoun by an Israeli sniper at the Catholic Church in Gaza. And that happened, I believe, on the 16th of December, so just a week ago, barely. Let's take a look at that's what you wrote about it, and you posted a picture of Nahida and Samar, who, as you wrote, were trying to go from the church over to the sisters' convent to use the only available bathroom facility, and they were brutally murdered by an Israeli sniper, and one tried to rescue the other and was then also shot and murdered. And this was condemned the very next day by Pope Francis, giving his weekly address from the Vatican in Rome. We can take a look at that. I don't know if we have if the sound is available. In any case, I believe the Pope is speaking in Italian. We can come back to that, but he did directly condemn their killing by name, and you noted in your tweet that Nahida and Samar Antoun were family friends, and so I was so sorry for your loss and for the loss of their family. Maybe we have the sound now. We'll just.
Non dimentichiamo i nostri fratelli e sorelle che soffrono per la guerra in Ucraina, in Palestina, in Israele e nelle altre zone del conflitto. L'avvicinarsi del Natale rafforza l'impegno per aprire strade di pace. Continuo a ricevere da Gaza notizie molto gravi e dolorose. Civili inermi sono oggetto di bombardamenti e spari. E questo è avvenuto persino all'interno del complesso parrocchiale della Santa Famiglia, dove non ci sono terroristi, ma famiglie, bambini, persone malate con disabilità, suore. Una mamma e sua figlia, la signora Navda Khalil Anton e la figlia Samar Qamar Anton, sono state uccise e altre persone ferite dai tiratori scelti mentre andavano in bagno. È stata danneggiata la casa delle suore di Madre Teresa, colpito il loro generatore. Qualcuno dice è il terrorismo, è la guerra. Sì, è la guerra, è il terrorismo. Per questo la scrittura afferma che Dio fa cessare le guerre, rompe gli archi e spezza le lance. Preghiamo il Signore per la pace.
You wrote also, Hammam, that this is a targeted death campaign during the Christmas season on the world's oldest Christian community. And you've also said that the Christian community in Gaza is on the verge of extinction. And those are very painful words to hear, and I'm sure very painful words for you to write and to speak. But I'd like you to talk. You were born in Gaza. You have memories of the Christian community there. Talk to us about the Christian community in Gaza, about the life of that community as part of the community in Gaza, and what it might mean if they too fall victim to this genocide and that extinction you fear takes place.
Yes, those are heavy words. The Christian community in Gaza is a very old one. I mean, it's some say it dates back to the time of Christ, and others were date back to the Ghassanid tribe more than 1,000 years ago. But now in Palestine, in recent history, we've, I remember the Christmas being a very special celebration in Gaza. And I know that last year, the lighting of the Christmas tree was such a wonderful occasion. And I've seen pictures on social media circulating about what it was like last year. And I saw some relatives in those pictures and family friends who were celebrating just last year at this time the lighting of the Christmas tree. And those pictures looked so festive, so joyous. Everybody, there was a smile on everybody's face. And just the comparison between then and now, here we have the Christian community being expelled and murdered and potentially extinct, as you said, and as I tweeted, just like others are everyone else is being murdered and being subjected to this genocide. I think for Israel, I think from having an analysis of this, I think Israel benefits from denying that there is a Christian population in Gaza and in Palestine more generally. Historically, Israel preferred to not utter the word Palestinian Christian or to mention that they're Palestinian Christians. They don't want the people in North America and Europe to know about the existence of Palestinian Christians, because there's the fear that the people's Christian people in North America and Europe will support the Palestinian cause more if they found out that there are Palestinian Christians like them who are being subjected to oppression and Israeli injustice. And the reason why I've been also coming out so strongly against these attacks on my family is because we also lost my great aunt on November 12th. Her name was Hammam Farah. She's my mother's aunt, and she couldn't stand being sheltered at the church anymore. So she found a ride to take her back to her house. And she's the type that doesn't listen to anyone. Other relatives tried to tell her that she should stay in the church for her own safety, but she was quite an independent woman. She used to travel all the time without even telling anyone, and whenever it was possible to travel outside of Gaza, and she would get a permit and go out there on an adventure. So she was quite known for that and quite popular in Gaza. Yes, that's her picture. Thank you. She was quite a character. And when she was killed, there was an outpouring of support, and she turned out to be more popular than my immediate family and I even knew here in Canada. But she when she reached her in front of her house, she got out of. Before that, the car that drove her back, the driver refused to keep driving beyond a certain point. He thought, it's too dangerous. I'm not going past this point. You're on your own from here. And she got out of the car, and I imagine her, saying, "To hell with you. I'm gonna just keep going on foot if I have to." She's that kind of woman. So she started walking towards her house, and an Israeli sniper shot her in the leg, below the knee. So she fell, and she called my relatives back at the church with her cell phone, and they told her they're gonna do whatever they can to send the Red Cross over and pick her up, but they had to get permission from the Israeli army for the Red Cross to be able to go and get to her. So she was lying on the road in the middle of the neighborhood, and others could see her there. My relatives called the neighbors in the vicinity. The neighbors said that they can see her, but no one can go out and get her because of all the snipers in the area. And there were tanks in the area as well. My great aunt herself was telling my relatives over the phone that there are tanks. I see tanks and I see snipers all over the place, taking position. And I know she made a number of calls to relatives. She did get a chance to talk to my mother as well. She talked to, I believe, the priest, and told him to pray for her the prayer of death, because it seems that she knew that this was the end for her. And so the Red Cross was denied to be able to go and get her, or there was no response from the Israeli army. I know the Red Cross did try to get permission, but I believe there was no response. And the next morning, I get a call from my mother, and she said that Auntie Ilham passed away, and the Red Cross was prevented. The ambulances were prevented from picking her up and giving her help. I mean, she was shot beneath the knee, which means that there was a possibility that she could have been saved, potentially. But she was probably, bled out to death. The next morning, the neighbors were able to leave their homes and start to make the trek down south. And as they were leaving, they went to check on her and found her that she was dead. And that's how we found out. It was the neighbors who told us. A week later, this is a little disturbing, but and I just found this out yesterday. I haven't written about this anywhere as of yet. But a week later, the two of the priests at the church, or two of the priest assistants, went to pick up her body for burial. And this was, I believe, when the the humanitarian pause, or whatever they call them, was coming into effect. They went to pick up her body, and they found that they only found parts of her body because it was run over by a tank. We don't know if that tank ran her over while she was alive or after she died. We don't know, and I don't think we'll ever know. But I just heard about this yesterday and was very disturbed. I in fact couldn't even sleep last night from the anxiety and how disturbing this news was, among other things, and obviously having to deal with under so much pressure with all of this going on.
Hammam, I'm so sorry. I mean, words, we don't have the words to express all the pain we're feeling, and that our families and friends and loved ones in Gaza have been going through. When they tell us the word that I hear probably most often from our friends and colleagues in Gaza about the situation is indescribable. And that, I think, speaks to the scale of horror beyond anything that human beings were made to cope with, including the having to think about the horrible torture and suffering that Israel put your aunt and so many other people through. I want to ask you, in a way, it's a question that I think I and others hesitate to ask, because I think our focus rightly is and should be on people in Gaza, people in Palestine, and in stopping the genocide and using all our effort to raise our voices, to demand a ceasefire, to demand an end of the complicity. And yet, at the same time, we are all going through this as...
Sorry, Ali, there's a bit of breakup in the audio.
Yeah, I think we are all going through this as individuals and as communities. And you are a therapist, and I'm not asking you for your professional opinion, but how can we? And we also hear from many people who watch this live stream that they feel a comfort in being part of this as a community. How do we cope with this, and what are you seeing in terms of people in your community and in Canada, and the experience of so many Palestinians in the diaspora, and particularly of Palestinians with family in Gaza, is also an enormous level of trauma that, again, I think many of us don't want to focus on that because we don't want to take away the focus from what's happening in Gaza. But at the same time, it's real, and we all need to be strong and present in order to be able to advocate and to keep speaking. What can you tell us about your own thoughts on that?
Sorry, Ali, there was a audio breakup there.
Yeah. I don't know if the connection is... Yeah.
Well, Hammam, I can try and paraphrase a little bit about what Ali said. Can you hear me okay? Oh, maybe Hammam can't hear. But we're talking about how do we process the secondary trauma, especially for Palestinians in the diaspora and in exile, and for that matter, for all of us who are watching this and reporting on it, and just this constant stream of just terrorizing and unfathomable news. How do we begin to process this kind of trauma?
Yeah. To be honest, I do get asked questions like this quite often, but there is no kind of, there is no magic solution here that a therapist can provide. What I do is I help individuals understand themselves better so they can understand how to navigate life in a better way. But when it comes to these kind of collective experiences of war and war trauma, I think stay connected as much as possible to with others, especially like this space here and at the live stream and the Electronic Intifada, the show. As you said, Ali, in your email, it's been you've heard that a lot of the audience members have found such a solace to be able to watch people who share in their convictions and in their views and in the suffering as well, to be able to come here and listen to the show. I'm sure a lot of people right now, what they need is to be with others, to be with those close to them. I think when it comes to dealing with this trauma, it's not going to be easy, even after this horror is over. But do it together is what I say. Feel these feelings together, and try to be with like-minded people in the community. Don't isolate as much as possible. And I'm aware that for myself, I do have a habit of self-isolating. So it's easier said than done for some of us. But there is a community out there. There are people out there who, as we know, we've seen the protests, for example. We've seen the overwhelming support from ordinary people on the ground, who are coming out and putting pressure on their respective governments to issue a ceasefire declaration or decision. We see that the majority of ordinary people do support the Palestinian cause, and so there are the communities out there for us to be a part of and to engage with, and to stay connected to, other than family members and other than friends. And for me in particular, it has been very hard personally, and I felt this sense of alienation, and not just isolation, but the sense of that it's very easy to slip into at this time, because you're experiencing the threat of extinction, of extermination, of non-existence, right? Your very existence is on the line now. It didn't feel like so much like that in the past, in previous aggressions and throughout the occupation, as much as it does today. Since October 7th until now, the feeling has been, there has been a shift in the emotional side of it. I've personally felt like I don't exist anymore, or I am under the threat of not existing anymore. And not just by Israel, but by people, people who support Israel here in Canada and in the U.S. And the Israel lobby, and all the silencing that happens, and people who've lost their jobs, and people who are under threat of losing their jobs and livelihoods, and possibly arrested for their views. So there is a lot of fear now, and we've seen obviously some of the atrocities that have happened against Palestinian American citizens, like those 3 young men who were shot in the U.S., and that 6-year-old kid who was murdered, and his mother severely injured by that attack in America. So there is a lot of fear in the community. We've seen rampant a rise in Islamophobia, just as we've seen a rise in anti-Semitism. We've also seen a rise in Islamophobia. We've seen a rise in anti-Palestinian racism, and so there is a lot of concern and a lot of fear around that. And with that fear comes the feeling of existential threat, the feeling of the rest of the world wants me to disappear. I'm not wanted, right? There's a feeling of being unwanted, and that's what I've felt very much so acutely throughout this time. And so it's very important to be able to look out there and remind ourselves and reach out to people that we care about, and people who care about us. Because the reality is that most people out there do support us and support the Palestinian resistance and the Palestinian cause.
Hammam Farah, thank you so much. I just want to underscore how sorry we all are about your family members and your family friends and the entire community in Gaza. And we're all with you, and we really appreciate you, especially talking about not giving into isolation. I think that's a really important point that I think strikes a deep chord with with all of us, and I'm sure most of our viewers as well. It's hard, but it's necessary. And just thank you so much for all that you do and for being with us on the live stream today.
Thank you, Hammam, and we are sending
Thank
you
you.
and your family and friends in Gaza a lot of love.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Hammam. And please keep us posted.
Thank you so
on
much.
your family. Yeah. Thanks. Come back on anytime.
Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit like, leave a comment. These engagements help us with the YouTube algorithm, and it helps us to get around Silicon Valley censorship as much as possible. It does make a difference. You can also support our journalism by going to electronicintifada.net and clicking on donate now. Thank you.